Okay, I believe we are live. Tim Thomas, we only met just over a month ago, I'd say. And I immediately felt a really deep connection with you, Tim. And I can tell that you have a heart of service and genuinely devoted to serving humanity. So I know this episode will be a really special one. For those who don't know, Tim is a former Australian Special Forces Commando, a martial artist, veteran recovery specialist. Tim left home at 17 to work on remote cattle stations, became a professional fighter in Australia's early MMA scene, so cool, and then joined the Special Forces after the Bali bombings, serving in Afghanistan and East Timor. Tim has helped raise over $1 million for mental health research and veteran focused initiatives. He's built some of Australia's most impactful veteran mental health programs. His book is called Fight, Flight, or Feel. What if something already inside of you could change everything outside of you? Tim, it's a real privilege and honor to be sitting with you today. Thanks so much for being here, mate.
Dave, great to be here.
Beautiful. Tim, you survived a near fatal ambush in Afghanistan. In that moment that you've shared with me, you mentioned that one breath changed everything for you, Tim. So what was actually happening inside you in that moment?
So something happened in the dirt of Afghanistan, and then the power of it was really undeniable when I was going through my own divorce. Very different war zone going off in your head. And so they train men to find out how much fatigue you can endure. And when you're in a war zone, you're not just fatigued, you're fatigued on a number of levels. It's not just every single cell in your body hurting. And you're not just away from family and friends and the country that you love, you're losing your mates over there. And you're seeing, terrible things happening to people you care about. And so it's fatigue in a level that I'd never experienced before. And I thought, what's the point? What is the point? I'm going to die. And it's like I've only got 2 cents worth of energy. And I remember thinking, Dave, that if I've only got 2 cents worth of energy, then I better invest that 2 cents wisely. And you never got anything you'd call sleep outside the wire, but every now and then you'd get horizontal. And instead of just trying to close my eyes and sleep, I wasn't ever shown this, right? But when you get, I was never shown breath work per se, but when you take a sight picture on your rifle, they tell you to take a deep breath in, let it out slowly, and then you have this moment where your sights are stable. But that's normally when I'm focusing on my right hand. So going to sleep, I focused on my left hand and I pictured like a little pinprick and the tip of my thumb, and I snorted through that prick through my nose. And it sent this sensation down my thumb. I couldn't explain this, but eventually my thumb didn't just feel good, it started glowing white. In my mind's eye, my thumb was glowing white, and I'm like, that feels really good. And then I drew it down my pointer finger, and then I went to sleep. And I went to sleep with 2 cents worth of energy, woke up with $2. I'm like, that's interesting. And so the next night I invested $2, through my fingers, down my hand, up my wrist, fell asleep, woke up with $20. And so I'm starting to understand that energy is like money. How you invest it is how you get it back. So it doesn't matter how much you have to start with, it's how you invest it, right? And again, I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I was waking up feeling better. And I also knew that I couldn't work any harder during the daytime. But what I could do is maximize my sleep. And it seemed that maximizing my sleep had this massive effect on my daytime activities. And I also noticed that the more energy I had, the more aware I was of what was around me. When I was really low, I'm like, everything hurts, screw the world, this is all terrible. But then the more energy I had, the more aware I became of, guess what? There's other people in my team. And if they're having a bad day, I'm having a bad day. So I can't just have enough energy for me. I need to be able to ensure the people around me are having a good day. And I'm pretty thick-skinned. I literally had to go to Afghanistan to realize the morality behind looking after the person next to you. Because even if I'm being selfish, who did I want around me when good times turn bad in a war zone? Do I want fatigued, non-functioning men, or do I want switched on, connected, well-rested, ready to go? So there was a certain wisdom in, I guess you call it being selfishly wise, and knowing that if you do invest in yourself and you connect powerfully with yourself, you can connect powerfully with others. And that's what it's really about. We don't make the space safe by controlling the environment. We make it safe with our connections with the humans around us. And that's the ethos of special forces. You don't need a whole army to fight a war. You just need a handful of really switched on guys, really connected guys that are fully intentionalized on an objective. And that was Afghanistan. I still didn't know what breathwork was. It was just something I did when I had to do it, right? But then when I get out and I discover, oh, there's a thing called breathwork. There's a guy called Wim Hof. You know, I love the guy. I looked at my phone this morning. I've got close to 16,000 rounds of Wim Hof breathwork, logged, probably more unlogged. So big fan of Wim Hof. And I started getting into breathwork, ice baths. But when the marriage broke down, there was a very different war zone going off in my head. Lost house, home, money, regular access to kids, sleeping on the couch of my parents' place. And you can bet at 2 a.m., this thing had a war zone that wasn't letting me sleep. There was a great irony in this, David. I knew that doing breath work would give me the peace that I was looking for. I knew that, right? That was my head knowledge, but my body was locked in this war zone and was not letting me do anything to alter my state. And that's when I realized that the mind's a bit like a garden, whatever you water grows. And I was watering the weeds of stress, and the weeds of stress had taken over my head. And these weeds, they're self-aware. They're aware of the things that you do that feed them. They're aware of the things that you do that starve them. And they knew very well that if I was to breathe, that they would get kicked out of my head. And they're like, nah. And if you want a tangible understanding of what that looks like, you've probably experienced before you do some sort of exercise, gym, run. There's always a part of you saying, let's do this later. Let's not do this now. And they're the disempowered parts of you, knowing that if you get fully empowered, they get kicked out, right? So they scream the loudest before they die. It's very easy to procrastinate before exercise because there's those disempowered parts of us not wanting to be kicked out of the space. And at 2 a.m., these stress weeds did a good job of preventing me from doing any kind of anything that would interrupt their hold on my thoughts. I got up, I was about to do pills, alcohol, self-harm, whatever it looked like, maybe all three. And then I looked at my left thumb, Dave, and I said, Tim, you can take one breath, take one fucking breath. And I drove it into my chest and it was like the first breath coming up from the deepest, darkest oceans. And I'm like, this is working, take two. And I put 2 fingers into my chest. This is working, take 3 fingers, so finger by finger, breath by breath. And somewhere between breath 15 and breath 25, those freaking stress weeds got kicked out and the rest of my brain came online. And the rest of my brain was like, Tim, thank you kicked those guys out. This is working, don't stop. And so there I was at this realization that, A, sometimes I really don't know what's best for me. And if I do what's natural, I'd probably just keep watering the stress weeds. And B, I think I just put a tear in the fabric of time and space, in the way that those 20, 25 breaths in that moment altered the version of Tim that's here right now. In some other reality, there's a version of Tim that, did pills, drugs, alcohol, self-harm, and it's a very different outcome. But that targeted breath work in that moment altered something. And I thought, well, this really, really works. I think it needs to be guided in the way that it's hard to do it just on your own. So as a result, Dave, I started making these stupid recordings of my own voice going, hey, Tim, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, and they just kept working. And I started sharing it with my friends. So my breath work is specifically for going to sleep. Okay. A lot of people don't know that our life is greatly impacted by 2 5-minute golden windows of time. The 5 minutes going to sleep, 5 minutes going into the unconscious, and the 5 minutes waking up. You know,
Mm,
and if you want to ruin someone's day, ruin the first 5 minutes of their waking. Conversely, if you can win the first 5 minutes, you've won the day. So my kind of thing was, if I can help people access their peace, their power, their connectivity, the feeling of safe, the feeling of trust, the feeling of I am connected back into my own power, and put some space between them and the outside concerns, then they're not just sleeping, they're sleeping better, they're sleeping deeper. And then when they wake up, there's a certain breath work that turns your bed into a trampoline to help sort of bounce you out of it. And so that was my journey from discovering this thing, like energy's like money, how you invest it's how you get it back. But then discovering the thing that stops us accessing it when we need it the most, but also how to cross that bridge.
mm.
And then I thought, well, if you discover something that actually works, then it's your responsibility to make it accessible to others. Because this version of Tim, you know, didn't drink, didn't do drugs, didn't self harm. So what can I do to help, or at least give options to people that are struggling to sleep?
Thank you, Tim. And I want to double click on that experience that you had, when you were deliberating, self-medicating, and, you're sleeping at your parents' place, and you described your mind being like a war zone, stress weeds. Can you, run us through what was actually going through your head at that point in time with your marriage breaking down? And what was it that drew you specifically to breath work as opposed to perhaps something more mental to try and combat or navigate the war zone of your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there is a big point of difference here. And meditation works when your thoughts can control thoughts. But if you've got a goddamn train wreck going through there, and a physical system that is throwing back the tension from your thoughts, your body's tense, your thoughts are tense, and it just goes back and forth. It's really hard to turn that train wreck around. However, what I found with breath work, it's a bit like going to the side of the house and pulling out the fuse box. It's a chemical override. You are literally, one of the reasons why breath work is so dependable is because think of us as humans evolving, right? Before we were thinking and speaking, putting paintings on rock walls, we were breathing. Our nervous system was interacting with the outside world, threats and friendlies, before we were thinking and speaking. And so this ancient wiring existed before you were speaking, before you were thinking. And the breath actually outranks the thinking mind. And the thinking mind knows this. So this is why when the thinking mind says, oh, I've got this guy locked down with negative thoughts, it doesn't want you to breathe, because that will literally get the newest member of the team in line. The ancient wiring that is there is actually, it's what connects us to ourselves, but it's also what connects us to others. And this is where every element has a certain nature. Fire's hot, and air can't be held, right? You try and hold the air, you can't do it. So it's kind of obvious, right? Air can't be held. So when we breathe in that nature of air, we can no longer hold on to our physical tension. We can no longer hold on to our mental tension. And when I say breathing the air, it's not breathing how you've probably been breathing most of your life. This is breathing to a certain depth, cadence, and duration that creates a medicinal effect within the body. And this is where people realize that you can't outthink some of these things that go through your head. But what people need to realize is we've got not so much a set of lungs, we've got a medicine cabinet with a lot of different shelves. And if you breathe a certain way, you can elicit a certain medicinal response. So, when I'm working with high school students, I show them how to breathe to drop their exams of stress, build up mental acuity, and perform, their exams. When I'm working with, corporates, I'll show them a breathwork technique that picks them up better than their cup of coffee. When I'm working with, parents and they're having trouble sleeping, I'll show them how to maximize their sleep. So whatever sleep they do get, it's the absolute best sleep they could get in those time frames. This is where it's the thinking mind has some impact, but it's a very let's just say it's not always your friend, your thinking mind, but your breath done right is like your closest friend, your best ally, your best life partner. It's going to be there at 2 a.m. It's going to be there in the morning when you're going to sleep. It's going to be there when you're stressed out outside the house. And when I sort of discovered this field of plenty, I thought, well, I've got to share this, and that's where I went around doing workshops. But I'm kind of tangenting here, Dave. But I need to sort of share that when I was hurting, when I was looking for solutions, there was a lot of people promising but not delivering. There was a lot of people that it seemed great when you're in the room with them, but then a week later, it's like nothing's changed, and you almost feel worse because it's like this sort of celebrity thing. When you're around them, you feel good. When you're not around them. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing this and taking it seriously, I have to run off 3 Ps. Okay. I call it my P test, right? It's got to be powerful, positive, but the third P is most important. It's got to be permanent. Okay. Permanency is really important because if we say we care about people, we've got to care about them tomorrow, the next week, the next year. If we say something's going to work, it's got to work tomorrow, the next week, the next year. And I realized I actually failed, Dave, when I'd just done a workshop at the local army base. And I got an email the next day from a Louis Colonel who didn't attend, but he said, all my corporals and sergeants were coming up to me saying that was the best workshop ever. That was the first good night's sleep we've had in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And this Louis Colonel thought it was awesome. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know how much damage can be done in 5 years of poor sleep? And how easy was that to change? You should have got me out 5 years ago. I mean, I didn't say that, but what he said next had me withdraw from public life for about 2 years. He said, Tim, it was good when you're there, but what have you got when you're not there? And I'm like, I have failed my P test. I'm not permanent. So I withdrew from public life, and tens of thousands of dollars later, I made the Breathwork in Bed app, which is kind of like the Uber Eats of good sleep, and that's my attempt to give people access. If they go, you know what, I want to give this a try in my own way, in my own time, then this is everyone owns a phone, everyone owns a set of lungs, and having that guided breath work, turning your bed into a cloud, literally tonight, and then having that morning experience where you're not connecting to your phone, you're not shoving that blue light through your eyes, you're pressing a button on your phone that then puts you back into bed and you connect to your body. So yeah, that's sort of my attempt at permanency, giving people access to this awesome stuff. And at the right time, I'd love to do a breathwork exercise with you, Dave, so people can, if they forget the blah blah blahing, they can remember that and then have that with them. And I've fulfilled on my permanency for people to take something away they can use after this.
Let's do it now.
Yes, okay, righto. Well, this is going to be super easy, my man. So yourself, Dave, and anyone listening, just be in a safe place, either in a supported chair. You don't want to be driving or operating heavy machinery or cutting up carrots. Everything's an invitation. Everything is an invitation. And breath is super powerful and it can change your state. So I want to set you up really powerfully with 3 simple questions. Dave, do you give permission to your very own breath to make every single cell inside your body feel really, really good?
I sure do. Yes.
Awesome. That was easy. Second one, yourself, Dave, and anyone listening, do you give permission to your very own breath to make your conscious thinking mind feel really, really good?
Yes.
Perfect. Last one, Dave, and those people listening, do you give permission to your very own breath to make your unconscious mind feel really, really good?
Yes.
So good. And this is going to be super, super easy, my man. All we're going to do is breathe in, then breathe in more, breathe in more, breathe in more, 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 more. Give that a go. In, and then hold it and just wriggle your shoulders like you're wriggling in bed. Wriggle your arms, wriggle your shoulders, feel that chest opening up. Wriggle, 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 wriggle. And I invite you to let out a really loud sigh and just let that energy circulate through your system. That's your energy. I did not do that for you. You did that for you. Okay. And whenever you want your own sovereign energy, okay, the breath is going to be there. Now, I'm going to take you deeper. We're dipping our toe in the shallow end of a very deep pool here, but I'm going to give you something that I would be happy that if people listening could walk away with. I'm like, okay, they've got access to the amazing power that is inside of them. We all have bodies, but we often don't know just how amazing they are. Inside our two thumbs and fingers, well, two thumbs and fingers, well, they are two thumbs, but in our two fingers and thumbs, we have a power button. All right. And if we pinch that really firmly, it helps inflate this top third. So you might have noticed when you breathe in and you breathed in more, 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 there was extra space opening up in that top third. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to exhale, breathe in, and halfway through our inhale, I want you to pinch those buttons really hard and just look up. Okay. And really focus on filling that top third. And it's like these are power buttons to help fill that top third. Is everyone cool with that? So I've
Let's
got
do
them
it.
up on the screen right now, but if you just place them down by your side and then blow it out, shake it out, blow it out, shake it out, out, all the way out. Let your head go forward. You'll be surprised how much you can blow out. And when it's all the way out, start breathing in halfway through. Hit those power buttons, look up, lean back, and then open and wriggle, open and wriggle. Feel that chest opening like a flower. Feel that chest opening like a flower. Feel the warm sun coming into that chest. Feel it coming into that chest. Feels so good. And when you're ready, let out the loudest sigh you can. And teeth start showing when we start doing things like this. Because in our natural energetic state, we smile, we're open, we see things clearly. All right. And that's just, like I said, that's just one or two breaths, right? And I need people to get a sense of what, if they did that, what that actually just did with them. Because the amount of pills that are out there that give you that sense of connection to your body, the amount of alcohol people will buy, the amount of coffee people buy, there's all these things out there that you will pay money for to do a half-assed job of what we just did for ourselves. So this is free energy. And when you understand how powerful your own body is, you become a sovereign nation, so to speak. What's underneath your skin, you are actually aware of, in charge of, and can access. And that's literally just my front of house samplers. If you walked away with that, I'd be happy. But if you want the full buffet experience, anyone listening today, 28 days, use the Breathwork in Bed app, and I'd be happy to gift that to you so you can actually feel what it is to have this medicine going into your unconscious. It is so incredible if you haven't experienced. And then waking up in the mornings as a person with chronic pain, so many times I'm like, what's the point of doing freaking anything right now?
Mm.
But if I can have that first 5 minutes, instead of me thinking how much life sucks, to actually just breathing in, breathing out, connect to this part of the body, remove the stuck energy from here. Because the body, when you wake up, it's got a lot of points where there's stuck energy. So if you can massage out those points, it really makes a huge difference. And like I said, I'm happy for people to play with that at no charge for 28 days. And I would feel like that would be a win from the enjoyable conversation that we've had today in the realm of permanency.
That was super powerful for me, Tim. Just, yeah, flooded with all kinds of feel good chemicals. And something that you pointed out to me, which I relate to very deeply, is just that seeking and dependence on external things that we think will give us the medicine that we're really after, and that long term, yeah, permanency with results that stick. And listeners of this show will know that I've had my own challenging experience with addiction. And for so long, I went unconsciously seeking out a form of self soothing and peace in substances. So I'd be curious to hear your take, Tim. Like, why do so many of us turn to these things which cost money and come with their own fair share of adverse effects and damages individually and relationally and all of that, when it's so much easier to tap into this medicine cabinet that exists within us?
And Dave, I want to acknowledge you and the journey you've had and the point you've come to. There's probably a lot of other versions of you that are not doing the work you're doing. Okay. So to answer that well put question, consider the possibility that everything we've been taught about feeling better is completely backwards. We've been indoctrinated to look outside of ourselves when the switch is already inside of us. And here's the thing. Here's where the rubber hits the road. You have to see the value in you before anyone else. You have to be the one to lay hold of and invest in your own energetic portfolio. So the reason why we look outside of ourselves is because we've been raised since we're knee high. We've been in a consumer society. And the goal of this consumer society is for us to consume. Okay. And who would consume more? Think of two groups of people. There's 1 million people who knew how to sleep really well, could breathe and give themselves peace, clarity, power, confidence, and could look after each other. But then there was another group of people, A, wasn't sleeping very well, B, felt that their self-worth was determined on things outside of them, and C, whatever they had was never enough. Like who would buy more crap they didn't need, and who would believe stuff that was just stupid? So this is where our consumer society has taught us that if we want something, we'll pay money and we'll get it an instant sort of fix. And unfortunately, these things work in the short term. Alcohol, pills, drug, they all work in the short term. But it's a bit like being energetically low, paying money for an energetic loan, but of $100, say, but then you've got to pay back $200 the next week. So you end up in more debt. You've got to take out a bigger loan, and then you're not even paying off interest. And that's where the sort of system's got you. And so, I take no small amount of joy giving people the disruptive technology that's underneath their own skin. And what I mean by disruptive technology is the thing that once you're aware of it, all the other stuff becomes redundant. So let's say I'm struggling to think of something. Well, think of a Okay, so cassette tapes were taken over by DVD players. DVD players were taken over by, playing music on your phone. So when you find a better way of doing things, everything in the past becomes disrupted, redundant. All right. And my vision for people is to understand all the awesomeness that we all desire. We want to feel good. I want to get high mind supply. I want to be able to focus. I want to be able to kick ass. I want to be able to make money in the outside world, but I want to do it understanding that it's me that gives me my sense of self-worth. All right. So in warfare, we have to find out the enemy's center of gravity, the thing that if you off-centered, you'd win the war. And us humans, as far as I've observed, our center of gravity is a sense of self-worth. Okay. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting the car, the income, the house, the relationship. But if you think for a second that that's going to do for you what you couldn't otherwise do for yourself, if you think that that is going to fill that bucket that never gets filled permanently, then we fill the bucket, we look at it the next day, it's empty, And then we think, well, when's the last time? How did I fill that bucket last time? Oh, I went out and made money. I went out and achieved this in the external world. These are the things that keep people stuck in that loop where it felt full for a second. A week later, it's empty. How did I feel it last time? I did it by chasing all these things that I believe will give me a sense of self-worth. But
Mm.
imagine in this, consider the possibility, and this is what I want for all my clients. And the term I use is energetic millionaire. I want all my clients to be energetic millionaires. Walking down the street, life occurs very differently when you've got $1 million of energy in your back pocket than if you've only got 20 cents. Okay. Because if you've only got 20 cents, you're very protective of it. If someone does take from you, you want to revenge that because that's a massive withdrawal. And you forget about the fact that you could be a millionaire the next day. All right. So imagine leaving the house and you've already given yourself the sense of self worth, the confidence, the peace, the power, the sense of connection. You can still go out in the world and kick ass and chew bubblegum, achieve what you want, but you see it for what it is. You see it as something I feel called to do, but it's I define who I am. I'm the one that gives me my sense of self worth.
That's so powerful, Tim. And I know my own experiences revolved around this notion of, yes, perhaps whether I was attaching my sense of self-worth to a business or to how I was perceived by others. That's the reality for so many of us. And my own journey going deeper into this work has taught me a lot about how, like you were saying before, if the nervous system is holding on to tension, stress, unprocessed emotion, that's going to signal to your brain that you're in danger, and it's going to continue to perpetuate those cycles of rumination, overthinking, anxiety related episodes. And so what breathwork has really offered for me is being able to actually process a lot of the shame that I held in my body, a lot of that sense of unworthiness or not good enoughness. That was an emotion that I never really allowed myself to fully feel. And so, and because this is the first time I've heard you or heard anyone really speak to this, and I really want to go a little bit deeper into it. What is it about the breath that can help someone restore their sense of self worth, as opposed to consistently seeking it in external things and superficial trappings of success?
No, no. And that's what you're pointing to there is how our mind isn't always our friend. Our mind is easily lied to. We often tell ourselves that I can't feel good unless I have these particular things, visible things in my world, because the only thing in this world is what I can see, right? If I see it, I believe it. But your breath, that's unseen. But that ancient wiring does outrank the thinking mind. And when you tap into it, you actually get all the things that your mind really wants, and that sort of deep sense of satisfaction. So imagine every time you felt like you needed confidence, you felt like you needed to de-stress, you felt like you needed to sleep, wake up, reduce pain scales, you had a breathwork technique that you could do on command. And imagine all those people who are going through those ranges of exhaustion and they don't have access to the thing that brings balance. Because it's okay to feel good. It's okay to get off centered. It's okay to, you know, act immature. Good energy levels is how quickly you can come back to center, how quickly you can come back to the mature version of yourself. All right. So it's not about, forever sitting on a mountaintop eating tofu and thinking high thoughts. No, it's about how rapidly you can come back to center, the mature version of you. And this is why I like to give people these breathwork techniques so they can do that on command. So they realize, I'm getting off centered here. Because in the past, when I couldn't self regulate, I didn't know why, but I had to drink half a carton of grog at the end of the day. I just had to, because that was my body not knowing how to find self regulation and looking for it outside of me. And my ignorance was getting exploited. And no one was going to do that for me. No one was going to see the value I had that no one else could see before I did. And it's this group hypnosis that we're in that stops us seeing that we have some incredible tools inside of us. The idea that you actually have everything you need inside of you. And people talk about that. Everyone's special. I don't actually like that saying. It gives people a false sense of, specialness. What I believe is everyone's got startup capital. And it's how you invest that determines how much you get back. It's that ongoing investment. So every single day, I'm doing breath work. I'm moving my body because that's the person I want to be in this world. And because I know that if I don't do my breath work, if my chronic pain kicks in, if I don't move my body, then I'm much more easily the version of me that's immature, overreactive, and it just doesn't work. I won't ever say anything's wrong. I'll just say it just doesn't work. It wasn't, because I don't make myself wrong for drinking all that alcohol, but it certainly didn't work. And I really understand how hard it is for people when they're in that state of pain and they're pouring external pain relief on there. Because if you were to stop that external pain relief and not have something inside of you to sort of really access, then you're sort of left in this place. And forward progress is really, really difficult in those. So I just want to have people, I want to ask everyone a question, because it's not so much the pain that people are in that is hard. It's when that pain transforms into loneliness, isolation. I'm the only person going through this. That's when life becomes particularly unbearable. There's things I want to say, but I can't say them. And those unspoken words become like rocks around my heart. I'm having trouble feeling, you know, I just want to feel something. And so the question I'm going to ask everyone listening, everyone's up against something. Okay. It could be a relationship problem, a work problem, physical, mental trauma, cancer. I came to this through, the veteran space, but this is everybody. And if you really get this, you're going to you're going to be forever changed. So I really want people to lean in with what you're up against. How many other people do you think are currently up against the same thing right now in this world? And don't just think a lot, give it a specific number. Even if it's 5% of the population, that's a big number still. And just speaking for myself, when I gave it a number, when I was in this healthcare system that didn't seem to understand, and it seemed to want to keep me sick, I thought, well, there's at least 5 million people in this. All right. So whatever number you have in your head for whatever it is you're up against, let's split that number. For me, it was 2.5 million people to my right, 2.5 million people to my left. And they're all looking in. And now I could hear their thoughts saying, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us. And when you're really hurting and you're trying to make progress, that can be super, super hard. But picture this, if it takes you, a month to make an inch of progress, that's actually 5 million inches of progress. And when you see all those other people, they exist on this planet. When you really connect with them, that breaks our isolation. That stops us thinking I'm the only one going through this, because you can then you are qualified to do the one thing that no one else can do. You can break their isolation. You can speak to the situation that they're currently in. You can dissolve those rocks around their hearts. The words they cannot say, you can articulate. That's your qualification. And it's not so much what you do for them, it's what you've come through for them. And when our loneliness is restored, when that human connection gets restored, even if you just ask that question, it's like the tourniquet comes off our higher thinking, and we've got more energy, more options. And I can guarantee that if people listening to this right now choose to move forward in that context, knowing that there are people in their future that are going to be saying, you know what, we're so glad that back in 2026, after you listened to that podcast, that you chose to move forward some way, somehow. Because the thing that took you, a week, a year, a decade to do, you've just helped us do in one conversation.
Mm. I really love that, Tim, because I think one of the biggest lies that we bought into is this illusion of separation, like we're separate from the rest of the world and it's just me, myself, and I. When in reality, all of us are experiencing the same emotions in this lifetime. All of us experience our own form of loss and grief and relationship breakdowns and unworthiness. And as soon as you can tap into that, even as you were saying those words, I already felt a lot more connected to you and to other people around. And when you can, whether it is breath work or anything else, I think if you do decide to acknowledge that you're not alone and that you do have the tools to make it through and you leverage those tools, then that actually sends a positive ripple effect, into your relationships, into your community, into your workplace. People start to notice and people start to feel inspired on a conscious and unconscious level as well. And it starts to have a really profound impact on those, 2.5 million people to the left and 2.5 million people to the right. Maybe not directly, but that person might have a better day because you decided to show up with a bit more calm and peace. And then they get to take a little bit of that energy and share it with their kids. And those kids, share it with their schoolmates. So that's really beautiful, mate. Thank you.
Firstly, you're right. We do not have to die to experience heaven and hell. We can do a pretty good job of that here, right? And it always amazed me in the Special Forces how you could be in the middle of hell, but connected to your mates, it could be a really powerful experience. And so it's not the pain we can't handle. It's the feeling of separation. It's the feeling of disconnect, the feeling that we're all alone in this, the feeling that no one's got my back, no one understands. That's the pain we can't handle. That's the pain that we'll pay money to make ourselves temporarily feel good for.
What would you say has been the biggest lesson for you, Tim, that you've taken from being in the Special Forces that has supported and shaped you and how you show up today and how you serve people through your work?
It's a very easy thing to say. The power of human connection. We were willing to risk our lives because we were looking after the mate next to us. We could do incredible things that most people would be terrified to do, go into the gates of hell because we had that human connection. But the equal and opposite exists. Like we can create power, confidence, heaven on earth with human connection. But human disconnection, that is a very special form of hell. And especially when human connection and trust gets betrayed. And betrayal is a very unique type of pain. There's even sayings, there's a special place in hell for betrayers, right? But let's just talk about the pain that happens when, well, firstly, the power that happens when you can trust somebody, but also the pain that happens when that trust gets betrayed. Because that is such a deep pain that if we don't get through, it's not going anywhere. Time is not a healer. And I was finding ways just to get by and not trust people. And it usually included a lot of substance, right? And I'll share a story that this did two things that had me, if I explain it correctly, then you guys will get this and you'll have this in your back pocket without having to go to those extremes to discover this. So the power of human trust. I thought I was about to die. It wasn't in Afghanistan. This was actually a shark attack. The shark had me by the leg. It wasn't like killing me from its bite. I was drowning, and I was spearfishing. And this is off Sydney, off of Cronulla, and I had a near-death experience, life flashing before my eyes. I'll get to that later, but there was another guy in the water with me. His name was Jimmy. And he was a fellow operator. When I say operator, fellow commando. And even though I'm about to die and I've got every right to be stressed out, he had this look in his eye. He's like, I've got this and I've got fucking you. And in that moment, this ripple of peace, calm, tranquility went through my whole system. It was tangible, powerful, and it really happened. And I say, okay, he's trying to take a shot on the shark. And so I turn my body so he can get a clean shot. And I've got to trust that he's going to hit that shark and not hit me. And so I just let go into it. He takes a shot, hits the shark, right? Now, obviously, I survived that. And it's a swashbuckling tale that included me actually reaching around inside the shark's mouth to turn on a particular electrical device that would then scare the shark off, right? But the point of the story is this. In that moment, I learned just how powerful trust is. And that in this world, if we don't have enough trust, we look for stuff. We look for stuff outside of us. So, you know, the idea of everyone standing around a cake, arguing over who gets the cake, that's when people don't feel connected. They don't know who to trust. So they think they can get their security from stuff. All right. But if you can really trust yourself and people around you, all of a sudden this higher thinking kicks in. You can see it all, you can build it all. You make as many cakes as you want, right? And that's one concept. Just let that one settle in. And the other one was afterwards someone asked me, Tim, when you saw your life flashing before your eyes, do you think that was a spiritual experience? I'm like, absolutely not. Because as much as it was cool, like I'd never seen my whole life go, right? But it was just my life through my own eyes, the stuff I'd already seen. It was like a timeline of all these events. If that was a truly spiritual experience, I wouldn't just see a timeline of my own actions and event, event, event. I'd see how that one event, that one action then affected others, affected others, affected others, right? So I actually believe that when we get to the other side, we'll be shown our life, but we'll also be shown our lives as we didn't see them, and how that one insignificant action had this massive impact, like a whole family tree that you've got nothing and no awareness of, right? But when we get to the other side, we're like, oh, that's what that was. And I believe the only compass we have to keep us on that path of, having those powerful and positive and permanent ripples is, you could call it, I feel called to do this. It's more giving me more joy. If I'm getting those things from my current lifestyle, that's the foreshadowing of you having this effect outside of you that you can't see, but you're on the right path.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing that. That's it speaks to this whole notion that I think we keep on coming back to, which is around trusting self, because I believe you have to trust yourself to be able to let someone else in as well, to be able to trust another fellow human being, something that you're struggling with, let alone with your whole life. So, and I think for anyone who might be in that position, who might be struggling with dependency on substances, or relationships are breaking down, what I'm hearing is that the first step to come out of something like that is to begin by trusting yourself and trusting in your own resources to be able to make it through. Because if you don't, then you always unconsciously outsource that trust to someone else to yeah, to pay money for it, as opposed to leveraging it within yourself.
Well, yeah, well, let's speak to that so we don't just leave it as an ideal. For me, trust is knowing that no matter what gets taken from me in this world, I can put it back in. So I can go into a relationship, love fully, regardless of what happens. I'm in touch with something so much greater than what was taken. And this is where the energetic millionaire mindset starts kicking in. Because if I know I'm making $1 million each day, because me, we all have a unique energy signature, right? The things that we invest energy into that give us a good return. Some people like playing a guitar. I don't. They invest like $100 in that. They get 1,000 back. If I did $100 worth of guitar, I'd lose that money, right? So this is where knowing yourself and understanding that if I invest this energy into this part of me in this particular way, and if you're unsure, start with a physical discipline. That's a basic one, a physical discipline where you invest energy into and it gives you a return. And a lot of people get this wrong, because right now it's not so much health and fitness, it's health and beauty. All right. You've got to look a certain way. I say, throw that crap out. Don't think shape, think state. Because after one proper, physical exertion, you can create an energetic state. Like on the day, you can do it. That shape might come, but it might be years later. And let me just say this, if you're doing your physical discipline because, hey, I don't like the look of my bum, then everything you do is an affirmation that you don't like a part of yourself. But if you're saying, listen, I value this thing so much, and I know when I invest into it, it's going to give me $10,000 back. And if all I had to do was get up and do some breath work at sunrise and stretch and move, for me to be an energetic millionaire, would I do it? For me to have the day I want, the interactions I want, would I do it? These are the things that once you actually lay hold of, you don't just have confidence, that regardless of what's taken, and this is usually the fear that paralyzes most people, the fear of loss, the fear of I have something and it could be taken from me. But if you know that, okay, yeah, that could be taken from me, well, I've got resources to put it back in. Life occurs very differently, and you can really be authentic with people without, the fear of, oh my gosh, I really hope this works. I'm like, bring it on type stuff.
For sure. I'm glad you pointed to that, Tim, around state. And I'm really big on root cause principles, because everything that we and thereby have or acquire or achieve always starts with state, your energetic emotional state. And that's the bedrock, that's the foundation upon what something like physical discipline can be built. And then, career success, and then deep, meaningful relationships. None of that matters if you're operating from a lowered, unresourced, energetic, and emotional state. So I want to slowly start bringing this in for a landing, because it's very rare I get to sit across from an ex-Special Forces Commando, Tim. So in light of everything that you've been through, everything that you've survived, and everything that you're now serving, what does being liberated mean to you?
Yeah, Dave, I think we already spoke to it. You know, your sovereign boundaries are ones where even if something is taken, you can put it back in. But the awareness that, okay, here's where I stop and here's where you start. Okay. And inside of here, I've got a say in this. And I'll say this. I had to, and I hope people get this without having to go through. I mean, you might have to, but hopefully you don't have to go through what I went through to understand this thing. So I had to go through my divorce, lose house, home, money, regular access to kids, to realize this thing. This skin here is about where I stop. Okay, everything outside of this, I can't control. Good news, what's underneath here, I'm in control of. So guess what? There's no more negotiations. Every single day, we're investing in this. We're doing the things that really light this thing up. And kind of like magic, all the things outside of us start aligning. So liberation to me is understanding that nothing outside of our skin we can control. Underneath, that's another story. And if you can be that rare individual that knows yourself, knows how to invest your unique energy signature into yourself and have it on the daily, then you're not going down the street with just 20 cents in your back pocket. You're going down the street with $1 million. You can be generous. You can give freely. You can know that tomorrow I can get all this back again. And life occurs very differently as an energetic millionaire, because I've been that guy that only had 20. And when someone took 10 cents from me, I got to revenge that shit. I spent years making revenge plans, completely forgetting the fact that I could have made another $1 million the next day. So yeah, liberation is knowing that powerful connections inside of yourself, you're in control of. No one will do that for you. And if they do, it's usually temporary. And it comes at a cost. And yeah, I think that's about it, my man.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tim. Where can people go to connect with you, to learn more about what you do?
Sure. Well, look, professionals, LinkedIn, corporates love what I do because sick days get cut in half once people's sleep gets improved. But like I mentioned earlier, I'd love to gift everyone listening 28 days of breath-assisted sleep improvement. And simply take your phone out, go into your app store, look up 3 words, breathwork, 1 word, in bed. We will walk and talk you through it. It's all in there. It's designed to Uber Eats in breathwork at the perfect time of going to sleep and at the perfect time of waking up. And so you can have those 2 golden 5-minute periods completely covered. You can win the first 5 minutes of the day.
Love it. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. Those 5 minutes are sacred and make or break your entire day. So, Tim, yeah, I highly encourage anyone who's listening to connect with Tim. He's a true professional and he deeply, deeply cares about what he does and about making the world a better place. And as you've heard, it's come from, a really powerful place, and some really important lessons have been learned. And I'm grateful that you get to share those with us today, Tim, and through your work. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, mate. This has been a real blast.
Dave, it's been so good to be here. Thank you.
Beautiful. And yeah, if something in this episode resonated with you and you're feeling inspired, please share this episode with someone else who might benefit, who might be curious about breath work or resilience or navigating some
If you know anyone
serious.
that's not sleeping, that would be a
If you know
good
anyone
start.
that's not sleeping, that's it. That's a pretty large majority of the population.
Over
So
40%.
beautiful. Well, yeah, I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you once again.